Hi everyone, it's Juan, and in today's video I'm going to share with you my orthostatic hypotension or OH story. So let's go. Alright, my story begins all the way back to December 9th, 2022, which was the week after my 25th birthday. On that day, I got sick with COVID and was literally bedridden for 2 weeks. Anyway, after being sick with COVID and being bedridden for 2 weeks, I managed to recover. Fast forward to April 8th, 2023, when I first became symptomatic. I was in the living room talking with my family, and all I was doing was standing still for 5 minutes. Within 5 minutes of me standing still, I noticed that I got a weird pins and needles tingling sensation in my legs and feet. I didn't think much of it, so I ignored it. Within a minute later, I started to get lightheaded, dizzy. I felt like I was going to faint. And luckily my sister, who saw what was going on, asked me if I was okay, and I said, no, I'm not okay. And she told me that, just to sit down and see how I feel after that. So I sat down for 10 to 15 minutes, and before you know it, the symptoms went away. I then felt like standing up. And then when I stood up, I started to get lightheaded, dizzy. I felt like I was going to faint again. So I told my sister to tell my family that I'm going to go upstairs to my room because I don't feel well. So she did, and off I went. When I got to my room, I noticed that I had 4 new symptoms come up. And those 4 new symptoms included chest pain, shortness of breath, heart palpitations, and fatigue like I had just run a marathon. My immediate thought was, oh, you probably caught COVID. You'll recover in 2 weeks just like last time. So 2 weeks went by, no recovery. Another week went by, no recovery. Another week went by, no recovery. And I said to myself, all right, if it lasts a month, I'm going to call my primary care physician to set up an appointment. So, lo and behold, a month went by and no recovery just yet. And when I saw that it was a month and no recovery yet, I was like, why haven't I gotten any better? So at that moment, I called my primary care physician, to set up an appointment. And lo and behold, I got an appointment. So fast forward to May 15th, 2023, when I finally see my primary care physician. The nurse asks me, what I was there for, and I basically told her my symptoms. And she, basically asked me if I had COVID, and I told her I did. And then after that, she basically says, all right, we're going to check your vitals in 3 different ways: laying down, sitting, and standing. So she checked my, vitals, my heart rate and blood pressure, laying down, and those are in the normal range. I sat down, she checked my heart rate and blood pressure again. Those are in the normal range. When I stood up, she knows that my heart rate stayed normal, just like for the, laying down and sitting, but she knows that my blood pressure dropped. When she knows that my blood pressure dropped, she got concerned. So she went ahead and got the doctor. And when the doctor came in, she basically looked over my symptoms and the vitals that the nurse wrote down. And she basically says to me, I think you may have POTS, postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I basically asked her, what's that? And she basically told me what POTS is. And then she said, for starters, I want you to start wearing compression socks. Also, increase your salt and fluid intake. She's like, to be sure that you don't have POTS, we're going to, test you via a 48-hour Holter monitor. And then after that, you're going to have to do, a bunch of lab work. And, you'll get your results within a day or 2. So I did. So a day or 2 went by, and, everything was good. And she basically said that, everything's normal, except my vitamin B12 level was in the low normal range. So she said, all right, I suggest you take vitamin B12 supplements. So I did, and then after that, I went ahead and scheduled my appointment for the 48-hour Holter monitor, and I had to wait, roughly, 3 weeks just to, get an appointment for the 48-hour Holter monitor. So fast forward to June 5th when I finally get the Holter monitor, and the technician is setting it up, and she basically tells me, all right, anytime you experience any symptoms, you're going to press the button and basically write down what symptoms you experience. And from those 48 hours I experienced, I remember I experienced, I believe if I'm not mistaken, because I wrote it down somewhere, but I don't have it with me, but I wrote down shortness of breath while climbing up the stairs, and also, dizziness because I stood up too quickly. And after that, after those 48 hours were up, I returned the Holter monitor, and they basically told me, all right, you'll get your results in 2 weeks. So 2 weeks went by, and the Holter monitor came out normal. The minute I noticed that it came out normal, I basically said to myself, that's strange. Why is it that all my lab work, is coming back normal, and the Holter monitor is coming back normal, but I'm still getting symptomatic? I'm taking these vitamin B12 supplements like, my doctor suggested, and I'm still getting symptomatic. So at that moment, I called I called the doctor and basically let them know that I'm taking the vitamin B12 supplements like the doctor suggested, but I'm still, getting symptomatic. So at that moment, they said basically, put me through the cardiology department, to speak with the actual cardiologist, because they told me that, they wanted me to see an actual cardiologist because of the symptoms I wrote down. So I spoke to the cardiology department, and lo and behold, I got an appointment for, the following Monday. So fast forward to Monday, June 26th, when I finally see the cardiologist. The nurse asked me what the reason for today's visit was, and basically I tell her my story, the symptoms I experienced, and she says, all right, we're going to check your heart rate and blood pressure sitting down, and then after that, we're going to perform an ECG on you. So, she checked my heart rate and blood pressure sitting down, and those are in the normal range. Then she had me lay down the examination table to do an ECG, and that came out normal. After that, she basically told me that she was going to get the doctor. So the doctor came in, and basically, he asks me what's wrong, and I'm basically telling him, from the symptoms I experienced, and then he's basically asking me a bunch of questions, and, I'm answering them. And he basically says, all right, let's check your results for your Holter monitor. So he checks my Holter monitor results, and then he's like, all right, I see that, everything's normal with the Holter monitor, except, it says here that you wrote shortness of breath while climbing up the stairs, and, dizziness by staying up too quickly. And I basically asked him, doctor, my primary care physician thinks I have POTS. Do I have POTS? And he basically says to me, no, you don't have POTS. In fact, you have something called orthostatic hypotension. And basically he told me what it is. And then after that, he basically pulled out a pamphlet, a sheet, with a bunch of information explaining what orthostatic hypotension is, how it's caused, why it happens, and, ways to manage it. Like, for example, increasing your salt and fluid intake, wearing compression socks, not drinking any alcohol. And after that, that was basically my diagnosis. But anyway, guys, I want to thank you guys so much for watching and hearing my story, and I'll see you guys later. Bye now.